Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for approval.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded. All those in favor, we need to take roll off, Justin?
Yep.
Okay,
I can do that. Commissioner Owens,
aye.
Commissioner Hallberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Maskey, Commissioner Messina,
Aye.
Commissioner Best,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
Aye. Well, actually, abstain maybe. I wasn't there, right?
Passed.
Yes, you would abstain.
Okay. So we're looking at the Villas at Pleasant is the next agenda item that was tabled at the last meeting. Is John here for a report this evening?
I am here. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Yes.
Okay. Apologize for doing it this way. I'm on vacation this week and I had planned to be in a place where I could video access this, but the traffic on the roads had other ideas. So here I am. Is Stuart Simic, the developer, also on the Zoom call?
He is.
Good. Okay. Well, what I'll do, gentlemen, is give a recap of what happened at the last meeting. As you know, we had the Villas of Pleasant, which is a 32-unit subdivision, Villa Homes, northwest corner of Pleasant Drive and Northridge Drive. So we have three actions related to the subdivision itself. We had the rezoning, which is changing the land use from its existing ag and R1 zoning to R3. That was approved unanimously by the Planning Commission and has been forwarded to the City Council for their consideration. The City Council did order the first reading of that rezoning change on September 8th, and so they're looking to hold the public hearing for the rezoning on the 21st. We also had some lengthy discussion related to the preliminary and final plat for the subdivision as well. The subdivision altogether would be 32 Villa Home sites, 16 within the first phase of development, and 32 altogether with the preliminary plat. Those two actions, as you know, were tabled at the last meeting. There was concern by the commissioners and concern shared from the public on the two western cul-de-sacs and their proximity to existing homes, essentially looking for some further separation in those areas so that they could screen those areas better from the new construction. And so Stuart Simic met with our city engineers, looked at a couple of different options and scenarios. I've provided an outline within your staff report itself on those. Essentially, there was three things that he really looked at. One was looking at potential those streets being private cul-de-sacs. If it's a private cul-de-sac, then the length of that and the size of the cul-de-sac bulb, but frankly, its proximity to the western property owners could be diminished. And looking at that, the developer was not in favor of doing so. The private cul-de-sac would add burden to the new property owners within the subdivision itself, owners association, and it was something that he was not looking at doing himself. The other option would be to construct, have some sort of deviation from the cul-de-sac bulb requirements that we have through our city engineering and fire department. Did have some discussions with those entities. They were not willing to make any modifications, so we're really left with that cul-de-sac design. So they looked at a third option there, which was to provide further separation. What's being proposed today is some fencing along with the landscaping that was shown on the last version we saw. The last version showed tree plantings around both cul-de-sac areas. They were 6 foot at height planting. I think they were spaced about 15 feet on center, so pretty dense, but not all the way dense at the beginning. with that, there would be a 6-foot privacy fence that would be constructed along the frontages of both those cul-de-sacs, so that there would be separation from those areas where they become closest to the property lines. And so that is what's being brought forward to tonight. That was really the reason for the tabling of the subdivision at the last meeting. So I can stand for any questions that folks may have on that. Stuart Simic, the developer, may also want to address other options or other things in addition to what I stated as well. So I will stand at this point. Thank you.
Okay. So we're here to approve a preliminary plat and a final plat. And so any more concerns or comments? We've not seen a great deal of change, I don't believe, from the last submittal. You people were there. I apologize, I wasn't. Does anybody have any feelings on this one? I know there was quite a bit of public comment, right?
There was, yeah. There was, I think, a summary within the report itself, and the minutes are attached with the packets. Essentially, there was concern shared about the change in the land use, the type of units that would be there, and then some of the draining issue with the flatness and existing drainage problems that were there already. But it seemed like the major issue that led to the tabling by the Planning Commission was due to the separation of these new homes from the existing homes.
Right. And in order to mitigate that, we've gone the screening route. So they've increased the planting. The distance really has not changed, correct?
Correct. I don't think the distance has changed significantly. Mr. Simic would be able to address that, but I don't believe that is much of a factor. The factor that comes in here is the 6-foot privacy fence. Is that when you look at the northern cul-de-sac would be on the north and west end, because there's kind of a jog in the property line there, and then on the southern cul-de-sac would be along that western boundary.
Correct.
Chair Johnson, the applicant Stuart Simic is raising his hands. You might want to respond to some of those questions.
Let's bring him in.
Okay.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. Thank you. Well, you probably have your John Hinsman laid out kind of what we went through. I'll add to that. We did have the conversations with the city engineers, and some of this, I guess I can appreciate their position, but their position is the way we build cul-de-sacs in Hastings. It needs to be standardized. They don't want to have, 5 different cul-de-sac, sizes, which I can understand based on that the city operates. They need to have consistency. There was no give on that. And then the other one that comes into play is the fire department. And again, a cul-de-sac, needs to meet certain turning radius for fire trucks, which are in the fleet. It's unfortunate that, we're not able to reduce that. We were hoping we could. We did look at the private street option. The only thing that'll do is it'll be a 4-foot reduction, but it also flips another switch. The streets then become private, not a major issue, but then you also check the box on the utilities, and then you get into all kinds of utility easements, which would be also required for the site. And I do want to clarify this, and John or Justin may be able to answer this if I'm wrong on it, but I do want you to know, between a private street and a public street, is no free ride or any incentive for the developer one way or the other. Ultimately, the developer pays for those streets, whether they're private or whether they're public. Same thing with the utilities. The city does not pay for the utilities. The developer pays for the utilities. Same thing on street maintenance. So the streets are going to have to get plowed. They're going to have to be maintained. It's either going to come out of the HOA or it's going to end up on their property tax bill. So there's no free ride at all. It all comes out at the end. And my argument, everyone, for looking at this, my argument for keeping it public, I think if you take a number of developments, put them into one basket, privately maintained streets, utilities, publicly maintained streets and utilities, and you put them side by side and looked at them in 20 or 30 years, my bet is that the publicly maintained streets are going to be maintained to a better standard. You're not going to have the fluctuation in a HOA, if they didn't get their budget or the reserves right. Cities are known most of the time for maintaining streets and doing a good job at it because they have the ability to tax for it. So that's kind of walking you through the public versus private. There's no windfall for me one way or the other. Again, the other thing we have going is visual impact. I do believe we are, with the privacy fence, that's going to reduce it. I had a nice conversation with Mr. Seward. He thought that would be a great idea. I can't say he said, oh, that's the be all end all, but he felt very good about that. I know there was another plan that was floated out there, but what everyone needs to know is that one of the first things we heard from the neighbors when this topic came up, and multiple neighbors, was site drainage. And I believe you were all sent pictures of some flooding that took place, I believe it was in the last year or two in the spring. And this absolutely positively improves that, 100+%. So I feel like we did the best we could on this with the neighbors. It's unfortunate the city engineers are not going to budge on that. But I also hope that you will consider approving this. I know Commissioner Messina mentioned all the research that he did and the demand that is out there for this product. And those people, if they're living, where you're seeing it in these other communities, it's absolutely out there in Hastings. So I hope you will consider this. We did the best we could on this. And I think it would be a use that would fit in very nicely with the neighbors and minimal visual impact with one-story housing. So thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Well, motion, discussion, what will it be?
Sure.
Gina?
Yeah. Can you see me? Oh, there you go. All right. Yeah. So I was the one that brought up the private versus public. So I appreciate you addressing that again. I went back and I looked at it. I've been in association for 15 years and our roads are looking brand new still. So I'm good there. I do have two-pronged concerns, and this is just for the future owners. I know you had mentioned a possible burden on the future owners, and that's exactly the two things that came to mind when I was recontemplating what we talked about last time, is how in your cold weather climate associations that you've already built, and I know you've got some, it looks like in Ohio. I don't know if you consider that cold weather climate, but in climates where you have snow removal situations, how does a future resident or association such as this sync up the removal of the snow on a public street, which we all know is one time and that's it until they're done with the whole city and then they come back, to a private company which can be contracted what they usually do is they take one swipe through the streets, they finish that up, they go and do all their other properties, then they come back and they remove, once the snow stops, they remove all the snow from the driveways. They pull that back out into the street, because if you look at your plat, all that snow has to come back into the street, which means the private company is then going to have to come back to then move, or is the city going to have to come back through and remove all that snow, or the association's going to have to contract with them to come back and remove that snow. And then you've got the issue of, once that snow is removed from the driveways, right? If the city decides to come through and do a cleanup, which they do, curbside, now they've plowed all of that snow up into these driveways. And so in a normal association, once those are done, they're normally done. They don't come back. And trust me, I know. And so you have to have a good snowblower or a really good shovel on hand to finish that up. That was my first concern. And then my other concern, two-prong, is as far as enforcement goes, when you go public streets, you take the ability to not enforce, I don't want to use enforce, but you take the ability away for the association to really watch and maintain those streets for parking issues, abandoned vehicles, and things like that. The city only has so much enforcement authority on public streets. Okay, the associations, if they're private streets, they have the authority to tow whenever they want. Okay, just like I would if somebody parked in my driveway, I could pay to have the car towed. But when the city, addresses a parking complaint, there's usually a process that they have to go through, and so that does diminish the future owner's abilities to enforce their roads. And that's the only two things that I wanted to bring up. In the purview of the commission, I can't force a change, and I get that part, and I'm glad you did review it. So those are my comments only, but everything else is in order, so there's no reason, to hold it up any longer. But those are two concerns I have, actually burdens on the owners by going with public streets versus private. And that's just especially when you're trying to sync private snow removal from the driveways, which obviously will have to come into a public street with that snow removal process. I just don't know how that works, as I've never been in an association where you've had to worry about that. So that's just my comments only. So I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Chair Johnson, there are some people who are attending. I'm not sure if they're here for this review or not, but if you'd like, you can ask if anyone wanted to speak. They could raise their hand.
I know that we technically don't have a public hearing here, correct?
That's correct.
That is correct. Yeah, what I caution you, Mr. Chairman, is we have three actions related to the subdivision: the rezoning, the preliminary plat, and the final plat. The issues related to land use have already been determined by the Planning Commission. So they have already made a recommendation on that to the City Council. So really, issues related to the land use are not really relevant for the commission tonight. They will be taken up by the City Council in a separate public hearing coming up on the 21st. So what we're really looking at tonight, in my opinion, is the reason that the Planning Commission tabled the action, which is the separation. If there's any comments related to the separation issue, I think that's appropriate for discussion or for comment by the public tonight. If there's other things related to the subdivision, the Planning Commission has discussed those. Those will be taken up by the City Council on the 21st.
So what I'm hearing is that the rezoning from R1 to R3 is already a done deal. It's moved on.
It's not.
Moved on to the council.
Correct.
Okay. And once again, so we're here, we're looking at the preliminary plat and the final plat. And so if we do have some residents that are interested in talking about the plat layout, I guess, the plat as we see it, I would entertain hearing from them. But if we're going to get wrapped up in, this shouldn't be zoned this way and, et cetera, then I don't. So if people want to comment, not on the zoning, I would entertain hearing their comments. And so I would ask that they raise their hand, right?
I see no hands raised. Some attendees did just drop off also.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that a lot of the contention here is that changing the zoning to something they didn't expect.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
this is Commissioner Matzke.
Mr. Metzger?
I believe most of the concern that still exists is on those cul-de-sacs. And at this point, and it's not a matter of whether it's going to be this development or not. I think the issue really still exists whether or not those cul-de-sacs have to be there or of that size. And my question really comes back, is this a requirement that we have to have those cul-de-sacs, or is it hard, fast, and written that they have to be there? Or is this something that our engineering department has basically said, we want these there, and our fire department has said, we want those there in the very case that there would be an emergency situation? I mean, when you look at the plat as is, those cul-de-sacs really are only serving the backyard of the existing houses. They're not, and turnarounds for emergency services. They're not really servicing the project itself, as I see it. If they were gone, I think everybody would be much happier. And if they can't be removed, then I think we just need to move on and just say, then this is what we've got to deal with. And I'm hoping we're all in agreement with that part of it. And that's kind of end of my discussion. Turning it back over to whoever else.
Appreciate that, Commissioner. This isn't a emergency issue, is it not, Justin? I mean, the alternative could be if there were a connecting road between Melody Court and Orchard Court, it would serve the same purpose.
Correct. The engineering department didn't require that there be cul-de-sacs, just that if there are cul-de-sacs, they have to be designed in this fashion. A dead-end road. So.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner,
So I guess going back to these cul-de-sacs, since that's kind of the issue here, I feel like just in general, the design here is creating the problem that we're talking about. So either, so I got a couple of questions for the developer before I get into that too much. So the idea is to put up fencing to kind of shield some of the light pollution, some of that stuff from the roadways. That'll exist on both of the cul-de-sacs, I'm assuming. And I would assume they would be constructed before, as soon as those roads are built or prior to being built. So as to the construction is not causing the light pollution into the neighbor's yard either. So on that, has the developer reached out to any of the other homeowners to get an understanding of what they feel about having that fence there? If that would satisfy a lot of their needs? I know he mentioned a little bit about that. And then getting back to needing cul-de-sacs in the first place, I'm with you, my fellow commissioners here that, I understand why the city requires them being there if there is no complete loop. And I'm still a little confused into why they designed it this way versus just making that complete loop. Maybe they can get 2 more houses into the year, which, that's great for them, but it seems like it's causing a lot of extra headache for the neighbors, for everybody else involved versus just a quick redesign. And I know there's no such thing as a quick, cheap redesign. but I think that burden falls upon the developer and not the neighbors.
Commissioners, Stuart Simic.
Go ahead, Stuart.
Thank you. I know there was an alternative plan that was out there. We took a look at that. We looked at that with our engineers. And if you do a loop through there, have 4 homes basically sitting on an island. So if you imagine that and you put yourself in the shoes of being a potential home buyer, those homes would ultimately attractive. I mean, from a sales and marketing standpoint. Or we got a lot of, in one of our initial meetings with the neighbors, we got a lot of feedback. I believe it was from the Sullivans that the homes were way too close to the property line. So if you go down the road of an alternative plan, when you move something, there's a give and take. So you're going to be moving something, you're going to be pushing. If you wanted to do a loop, let's just say, for example, you could do a loop and you were okay with 4 island homes, the homes are ultimately going to be pushed closer to the property line, which is also going to cause, and previously did, got some, negative feedback on that. Furthermore, the stormwater, based on the site, soil conditions, all those other things, this site plan addresses that. And if you go and change it, everything else kind of starts to fall out of order. And I'm not the exact person to talk on that. I'd have to have the engineer. The site generally is a flat site, but it also drains to the west, and that's why the storm ponds are where they are. And also we do have one down in the southeast corner. But again, it's, you can't push water uphill, I guess is what I would say. And that was taken into consideration with this plan. So. And one last comment, I apologize, I have a barking dog in the background, but I'm losing my train of thought here. I'll think of it in a minute, I promise. Oh, cul-de-sacs. We would be happy to have a dead-end street or a hammerhead turnaround. Other cities, they don't have an issue with a hammerhead turnaround. That would reduce it. The whole reality of these as cul-de-sacs, if your typical cul-de-sac that you see out there and you think about, there's a home around, a cul-de-sac, you probably have anywhere from 4 to 6 homes, driveways off a cul-de-sac. If you look at this cul-de-sac, there is not really one home off this cul-de-sac. If you wanted to stretch it, you could say there's one home off there. It's unfortunate that it's required. It'd be even more cost effective from a developer standpoint if we didn't have to put in the cul-de-sacs. They're not cheap. They are going to get extremely limited use. And again, I think if anyone put their shoes in, put themselves in the shoes of an owner there, most people aren't going to drive, down there and use it. So.
Thank you, Mr. Simic.
Thank you.
I don't know about the technicalities here, but this lot does drain to the west. Would it make any sense to, and I don't know if it's a benefit or not, but what if the connection between the 2 streets was on the westerly property line, and they don't create an island of homes. In fact, they'd all be in the island. Road would interrupt any drainage to the west. So instead of and I don't know if the neighbors are for or against this or how they would feel, you're still gonna have headlights coming around the corners. It looks to me like you would lose a lot. I don't know if that solves anything.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I just want to go back to what Commissioner Maskey said. He hit it right on the nose. These cul-de-sacs are only going to be used for servicing only. They're not going to be used by the residents. So, and I get that. My only concern too, though, is are they wide enough to park on? John, you might have to help me out with this. Are they going to have no parking on them? How does that work from a city perspective, since they are public streets?
I don't know if I see John here anymore.
Oh, Justin, help me out with that. So because that would be my concern with it being a public roadway, is that then the neighbors' concerns could creep back in, because then you could have people parking their cars all up and around in the cul-de-sac. Now you're back into that whole cars in my backyard thing. They may not be using it for turning around, but what if somebody has a large event? I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. Justin, can you help me out with that as far as how that would work from the city perspective? Because any cars parked in there is going to narrow it down where you're not going to be able to get a fire truck in through there anyway, or an ambulance or what have you. So how does the city prevent that from being guest parking or overflow parking for something else, thus restricting the cul-de-sac and preventing it from being even used for a service purpose?
Well, I don't know if there's what the problem would be with parking on the street. Parking on public streets is allowed all over the city.
Right.
We generally won't allow parking on the street in situations where the street is in width. Do you know what the width is on the street here? It's not labeled on the sheet I have.
Believe the standard cul-de-sac there is 100 feet in diameter. I would have to have my engineer correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just looking at the text here.
Sure. Do you know what the width is of the road that goes around that cul-de-sac? Because it's got an island.
Eli, if I know you're listening, can you tell us what the width of the cul-de-sac is? I believe it's 100 feet. Waiting for a text or reply, or we'll have to let him on the call.
Looking at it's 100 feet at its widest point.
Okay.
And those roadways are 10, 20, 30, 40 feet.
Well, the right of way is 60 feet. The road is generally going to be around 32.
20, okay, 30 feet of pavement.
Yeah, I mean, we have a couple of standards. I don't know if they've changed, they get narrower as time goes on. The ones that I work with mostly when people are, doing things to their own home, they're between 32 and 34, but they may be 30 here. There's a certain width that once they go below, we would have a no parking sign on one side. And if they were narrower yet, it would be on both. But typically they're wide enough to allow for parking on both sides.
Chair Johnson?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
What I would also add is all of these will have a 2-car garage with room for 2 cars in the driveway. And again, generally speaking, these homes are going to be occupied by 1 to 2 people. You are not going to have, like if you drove by my house where I've got, a wife and then 2 drivers, you are going to have less cars per household in this neighborhood, generally speaking. So could somebody park in the cul-de-sac? I suppose, but highly unlikely when there would be ample parking in the driveway and or in front of their home.
Okay, thanks, Stuart. I was just laying that out there so we make an informed decision and just putting all the scenarios out there so that we don't go, oh my gosh, I forgot about this. So there's this thing, and public versus, like Justin said, anyone can park on a public street, but on a private street, not anyone can park on a private street. That's the association. that maintains that. So anyway, just food for thought. Thank you.
Chair,
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Hall.
I might have missed it. I know you were starting to touch on that. Stuart, what would the implications be if, say, you removed lot number 6 on Orchard Court and just connected Orchard Court and Melody Court? You'd have green space back there, and you would eliminate some of that light pollution from some of those homes based on losing the giant curve of the cul-de-sacs. What would the impact be on the drainage and?
Yeah, well, number one, you'd add, then you would be adding traffic, more traffic, I guess, behind the neighbors.
But we've said all along that there would be very little use of those cul-de-sacs.
I agree, and Eli is on this call, but I guess he is not able to be unmuted. I could have him better address this. I'm trying to open up my plan so I have that in front of me. First, I got the wrong page.
I think I see Eli showing up here now.
Yes,
See him?
yes, Mr. Johnson.
Excellent. Join us, please.
You bet. So right now, the distance from lot 1 to the adjacent property line is between 60 and 70 feet. I don't have that dimensioned right now in front of me, and the right of way is 60 feet that's required. So really, we wouldn't have enough area to convey any drainage or provide any stormwater treatment. You know, we would lose that ability for that entire area there. And that's one of the best areas for stormwater treatment to help alleviate the drainage. And as far as soil types, that's a good soil area to do it, as well as providing a buffer. Then we'd just be putting roads up to additional neighbors right up to their properties. But as far as drainage wise, it would essentially just pave over right now where we're treating all our stormwater.
Okay, thank you, Eli.
And folks, John Hinsman here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, John, go ahead.
Yeah, I just got dropped on that. So I've heard most of the conversation here. I think essentially what it comes down to here is we've got these, if we're going to put cul-de-sacs in, we've got regulations from our city engineering department as to what they will be. And frankly, they're very large, and they come right to the edge of the residences that are there. The developer has done some things to provide some better screening over there, but that's the way that one is. The connection of the cul-de-sacs, when I've reviewed those with the developer, it's going to bring homes closer to the existing residents towards the west end of it. If you were to take the road, if you were to move the road further to the west, as Eli and Stuart were explaining, it's gonna mess negatively with some of the stormwater drainage, which is already an existing condition that we're trying to rectify within the situation here. So it's a tough situation here, folks. I understand that. It'd be nice not to have a little more separation there, but with the regulations that we're being dealt with right now, what I see as a staff member here is the screening that is being proposed here with the fencing, and what was proposed earlier with the evergreen plantings here. You know, I believe that is sufficient.
So, and maybe this is a question for Eli. So I'm not privy to a grading plan. So you plan on trapping water then on the western boundary, west of lot 6 and lot 1?
Yes. Yeah. Part of our design was to try and treat that water as close to the source of it as we could. And so that's one of the areas where we lowered the grade significantly from what it is right now.
Gotcha.
To allow some of that problem area to drain through.
Right.
And be treated there.
Is there a caveat then to bring anything back to the east Or what if this particular area overflows then? Is it,
Currently, right now, it drains beneath both the cul-de-sacs. We've got a culvert underneath the northern cul-de-sac, which drains it into this area, where a lot of it will soak into the ground. Then it'll go south beneath the southern cul-de-sac to another treatment area where more of it will soak into the ground. And overflows would be onto the road and across, should that culvert back up
correct?
or
Correct.
something happen.
Yep, perfect. Then I have a question about the teardrop cul-de-sacs themselves. I mean, I know this is potentially the standard for the city. I know there are others that are just round. Is it possible to reduce the size in some fashion? No. Yes?
Yeah, Commissioner, we've spoken with the engineering department on that one. They are not willing to make that change. A possible suggestion that the commission could make is they can make a recommendation to the city council to say we would like you to make the cul-de-sac smaller, and that would be would be in opposition to what the city engineering would be recommending on that one. But that's your purview as well.
Right. Because, you go a stone's throw away here to the northwest and there's a round cul-de-sac.
Yeah. We've had situations like that come up before where we have smaller cul-de-sacs than our standards. I understand and I appreciate our city engineering standards on that one here. But you are free to make any suggestions, recommendations that could be contrary to that.
Yeah. So, and I guess my question maybe for the commissioners too, or city staff, are we going to gain anything?
Yeah, I mean, by making the cul-de-sac smaller, you certainly potentially provide some more separation on there. I don't know how great the separation would be from a distance standpoint. I think, the important thing would be from a physical separation standpoint. I do understand, from a use standpoint, not many people are going to be using these cul-de-sacs at all. It's really going to be for ease of maintenance for our city staff.
Right.
Mr. Chair, someone in the audience has their hand raised.
Oh, okay. Don't think I see that. Can we bring where I got 15.
I think Todd's in now.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so Todd, what can we do for you?
Well, Commissioner, is it Mitch?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Which works.
Yep. Well, I'm getting cataract surgery on Wednesday, so I can't see very well. But anyways, with that said, of course, I'm in the northwest corner of that controversial cul-de-sac that we're talking about.
Okay.
And I of course, I've developed a lot of properties in Hastings and built several, I think, nice communities in this town, and that I think a lot of people are very proud of. And I'm just hoping that one of the developments that I did do was called Summit Point, and it did have a teardrop cul-de-sac, and they did allow that because of situations very similar to this. So, I mean, there was 2 cul-de-sacs in this development. One serviced 6 villas, and that was the teardrop one. The other one serviced a little bit more, and I had to do the big eyebrow one, or the island one. Anyways, long story short is there's got to be some, I mean, the engineering department in this city is very black and white, and it very frustrates me because there's got to be some kind of gray area here where there's got to be some. I mean, there's what 5 or 6 villas on that street. That, I mean, it really makes me angry that I can't have a little bit more separation from my backyard to a street. I mean, it's literally going to be like 10 feet away from my backyard line. So if you could do a teardrop, it would at least give me like maybe 20, 25 feet. So I'm kind of upset with this because there's been other precedences out there that has done this. And so I really would like what you said is if you are going to, and I do want this to be approved, by the way, I think it's a good development, but I want it to have some compromises. And I want you guys to recommend having that cul-de-sac shrunken, and because I think it's a wise move and it's unneeded. So that's what I want. And so I just want you guys to know that.
Oh, we appreciate that.
All right.
Todd.
Thank you.
Todd, if I could ask you
Yes.
something?
Yes.
You know, the fencing and the landscaping, do you have a feeling about, does that help? I mean, well, how do you feel about those things?
No, I'm all for that. I do want that as well. So I would like a shrunken cul-de-sac and the fencing and landscaping, to be honest with you. And Stuart's been very, very nice to me too. He's called me several times and we've had conversation. And so I do appreciate all that as well. So I want to work with everybody here, but I really do think there's some kind of compromise that should be allowed here. And I don't understand why there's not. And I've been on this Chamber of Commerce Development Committee, and the biggest thing that we've had with all the developers in Hastings is the engineering department is so hard to work with. It's so difficult to work with. And so that drives me crazy when they keep saying no, no, no to Stuart. I mean, this is not right. They should look elsewhere at stuff to help promote development in this town. And I don't know why they are so staunch about this. I don't know. And it keeps saying that they can't turn a fire truck around there. That's wrong. You could pull a fire truck in, put a fire out at the very end at the cul-de-sac without turning it around, and then back up. It's not a safety issue for me. So I'm sorry. I mean, I'm just trying to be like logical.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, so I remind the commissioners that option is available before you as well. Is that you may recommend to the city council that a smaller cul-de-sac be accepted along with the fencing and landscaping that is there. I mean that's your prerogative as a commission. I mean our city engineering department has their standards, and again I appreciate those standards. But if you feel that they are not in keeping with what you desire the development to be, you have the purview of recommending something different.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Okay, with that being said, based on everything that I've heard, I want to make a motion to approve item number 2, the preliminary plat, creation of 32 villa home sites, subject to those conditions. And I want to add the condition that John just discussed, that the city council look at reducing the size of the cul-de-sac to make it more, I guess, not palette, what's the word I'm looking for? So that it fits the size of the development, I guess, so that we don't have this large cul-de-sac and a small development. I'd like them to review the cul-de-sac requirement upon approval.
And just to clarify, would that be both north and south cul-de-sac, Orchard Court and Melody Court, or you were talking primarily Melody?
Mr. Chair, that would be both of the cul-de-sacs in question.
Both of the westerly cul-de-sacs.
Yes, the 2 western cul-de-sacs. The northern cul-de-sac is as would be expected. It's got houses all around it, so that makes sense. But
Absolutely, yeah.
but I'd like to see a reduction in the cul-de-sac size, similar to what was done on Summit Point. I did drive that, by the way, this past week. I did go up there and I saw the reduction, and it didn't seem to be any kind of an issue as far as room goes. So that's my recommendation. Again, approve item number 2, subject to all the conditions, with the recommendation that city council take up the concept of reducing the size of those 2 cul-de-sacs, the 2 western cul-de-sacs. And for the record, that'd be the cul-de-sac on Melody Court and the cul-de-sac on Orchard Court.
Excellent. We have a motion on the table. Do I hear a second?
I second that motion. Commissioner Matsky.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Can I get you to call roll, Justin?
That's Commissioner Romans,
No.
Commissioner Hulberg,
No.
Hetzke, Tina, Commissioner Best,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson. Okay, 4 yeses is a quorum, so the recommendation will be going forward to the city council at their next meeting on September 24th, 21st.
Who the fuck are those 2 assholes? Sure. Oopsie.
Yep. Try that mute button.
Sorry.
Okay, so let me see. So we are up to item number 4, house move, existing house at 535 35th Avenue Southwest.
Mr. Chair, there's still the platting of the first phase.
So we haven't beaten this horse enough yet. Okay.
Am I right on that, Justin?
Well, the agenda just lists preliminary and final plat, so I don't know if that motion, I guess, was for approving the preliminary and the final plat, or if it was just approving the preliminary plat. Yes,
Well-
Commissioner Messina.
Well, per the recommendations on our first time going around, instruction was to take up each individual action separately. So my motion was on, we've already approved 1. My motion was on 2 only, and then 3 would be next. And I didn't make a motion on that.
Oh, I see. Okay. Whoa.
I'm sorry, Mitch, you weren't here at the last meeting. John wanted us to take up the 3 things individually. So
Individually.
Yeah.
And it's my understanding the rezoning has taken place.
that's correct.
Correct,
So
yeah.
my motion and the subsequent approval was the preliminary plat.
For number 2.
But we have not taken up the motion on the final plat. That would be the next motion to entertain.
Well, then I would have a question regarding modifications here. We've suggested some modifications. And so do we approve a final plat once we've seen those modifications? What are your thoughts on that, Justin?
You know, what I'd suggest at this point, commissioners, is what we have as conditions for the final plat, as it sits right now, is conformity with the preliminary plat. We've already made the motion to forward to the city council with those changes. I would suggest that a similar motion with those changes for the final plat would be appropriate at this time and consistent with what we're doing.
So we could entertain a motion on approving the final plat contingent on our recommendations.
Correct.
And I would make such a motion. And that would be for the phase 1 development, 16 lots. So we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second that. This is Commissioner Matsky.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further discussion? Can I get you to call roll, Justin?
Commissioner Romans,
No.
No.
Commissioner
Justin, when
Matzke,
Oh, there you go.
Yes, aye.
Commissioner Messina,
Yes.
Commissioner Best,
Aye.
and Chair Johnson.
Aye.
That also passes.
All right. And
Thank you, guys. Both those items will go forward to the 21st for city council approval, along with the public hearing for the zoning. So thank you for your time tonight.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Simic. Mr. Rupnow, appreciate you attending.
Thank you.
All right, so we are moving along then to item number 4 on the agenda, the house move. Place an existing house at 535 35th Street West. This is number 2020-42. Staff report, Justin?
Thank you, Chair Johnson. The purpose of reviewing a proposed house move is to determine if a proposed building has the aesthetic and functional compatibility with the area. The applicant is proposing to move a manufactured house from 231 Galena Street. About 20 years old. It's proposed to be removed for construction of a new home on that site. The proposed location to place the relocated structure is 535 35th Street West. In 2014, this site was proposed for another house move from the CVS site, but was not moved due to timing constraints for that project. The proposed house is good. The surrounding homes of the proposed relocation area greatly. There's some brick apartments in the area. There's split level homes, ramblers. There's 4-unit condos, and there's heavy commercial adjacent to the site. Statistics were taken just from the single family homes, which the closest ones were just across the street on Lester. The average building value for the 6 closest homes to the north is $212,000 for the building values only. The value of the proposed house only that's proposed for being relocated here is $149,300. The 6 homes to the north were all constructed between 1969 and 1975. The proposed manufactured home was built in 1999. The proposed house has a foundation size of 1,232 square feet. Of the 6 homes to the north is 1,400 square feet. The proposed placement of the home on the site has to meet setback requirements of the R3 zoning district, which would be 20 feet front and rear, 7 feet on each side. Supposed to be shifted over to the east side, 7 feet, to allow for on the western side of 25 feet. But a garage is not currently proposed. This house is a manufactured house, which is in 2 sections connected in the middle, and it's sided with vinyl siding, and it sits on a block foundation and would have to be relocated on a new masonry foundation. There's a few types of fabricated homes. The first would be the original type of mobile home. They're pre-built homes with little regulation guiding their design and construction or installation, and had little plumbing or no plumbing and electrical standards with safety and energy efficiency. From the HUD standards of 1976, those types of models were eliminated and replaced with what are now considered manufactured homes, which are pre-built homes that are moved onto a site as either a single, double, or triple unit. The proposed home is a double unit of that variety. There's also a third type called a modular home. They're pre-built homes, and they're built to conform to the actual codes of a local jurisdiction, and are often moved onto a site in 2 and 5 different sections and put together on the site. Manufactured homes cannot be outright banned from residential zoning districts. However, most cities, including Hastings, do require some base requirements for homes that can make it difficult to include those in a residential area. That they have to be on a permanent foundation, be less than 20 feet wide, and they can't have sheet metal siding. These regulations, along with the current house move review, assures that new homes are consistent with the aesthetic and functional compatibility of the area. The building official is aware of the proposal, has inspected the house, and would just have to approve final plans and building permit if the house move permit were granted. Notice was sent to the adjacent property owners. We did receive notice today from 3 neighbors to the south that are all within the adjacent 4-unit condo building. We also received a letter in opposition from the Condo Association president. The concerns enumerated by those individuals include current problems from the renters of the apartment buildings to the south, which are owned by the applicant, from general from those renters, vehicle noise, climbing over the fence, cutting through their association, throwing trash over the fence, police activity. It was also mentioned that they have concerns with current drainage from the site, funneling into their property, and possible impact to their property values from this house being moved into this location. Did support the application, although the reason is because although this home doesn't exactly match the general type of home in the area, there isn't really a general type of home in the area. There's a big mixture from ramblers, which look similar to this, to split entries, apartment buildings, and commercial. But if the similar value to some of the structures, although the average is definitely on the low end for size and value. The commission did recommend approval. There's some conditions that staff would want included. That would include the proper permits are issued. The residential lot regulations are upheld. The required trees are planted for a single family home. Sunset clause, if something doesn't occur on the site, that it would be null and void after a year. This with the plans and staff report, and that access easement be recorded that would allow vehicular access to the rear parking area of the apartment building adjacent to the site. Currently, much of the access through this lot. There also is equal access on the other side of the apartment building, but it comes across the next apartment building's property. They're currently all owned by the same owner, so it's not an issue, but just to make sure if these buildings were sold separately in the future, that there would be some type of access legally binding for those. I do have just a couple items I was gonna on screen share, if you have a minute. Let's see what it's at. So this is a typical mobile home until late 70s. You still probably find them in some parks. This is a typical manufactured home, which can be in different widths. One is probably one of the more fancy ones. It's just these are just general pictures. And this is a modular home, which can, especially modern ones, can be discernible from a site-built home. The site of the house presently at 231 Galena Street, backing up to the Vermilion River off of, I think, 3rd Street. So this is the home up there. There's also a couple of garages on the site that will not be moved with the home. Site for the proposed move would be down here off of 35th Street West. Hard to see at this elevation, but there's a little orange site. It's at the corner of Lester and 35th Street. So this is the site here. It's a fairly large lot. This is a rough interpretation of the size of the home, showing the setbacks at 20 feet from the front property line, feet from the east property line, and 25 on the west. I don't recall exactly what it was, but there's quite a bit of distance to the rear property line. That access I was mentioning before is currently this apartment building gets its access through this lot to some degree. Also, they get access through the next apartment building over driveway. It could all come from one or the other. Parking probably would have to be reorganized, but seeing as how have legal access, even though it's owned by the same property, so we would just need to have type of access easement that would meet some requirements for access to that site. A recent photograph of the house to be moved from Galena Street. Side here, the long side with this door is what would be facing west with that 25-foot setback to the apartment building. And this narrow end side with this stairway and door would be facing to the north towards Lester. A photograph of the inside of the house. See, it's two sides that are connected in the middle. It's just a manufacturer's certificate tagged on the home. Photograph of the side that would be facing the east side. And put setback, and then this is again that facing the north. And these are some general pictures of the location. This is looking at the site from Lester Avenue. One of the apartment buildings. This proposed area would be 7 feet from this white fence. It'd be 20 feet back from the property line, which probably this stake here. It's one of those stakes, but it'd be another survey that shows it a little better. This is taken from the back corner of the site, looking at the apartment building, and kind of you can see up Lester. Is the corner of 35th and Lester, across from the site. One apartment building on Lester, and then the rest are homes. This is looking down Lester Street. Aerial picture showing the outline of the site. This is a heavy commercial to the east. Different uses in that area. That homeowners association of condominiums, 3 of those who responded opposed to the project live in this building. The 2 that are nearest, and then one of these northern ones. A modified survey showing the approximate setback. You'd see the setback of the building would be slightly in front of that, and then it would extend slightly behind it. Still be pretty far from property line. I can stand for any questions. Public hearing. I'm not sure. There may be some people attending. I guess I don't see any of that are attending still.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. What is the lot currently platted as? Is it single-family residence, or is it currently platted as an apartment complex?
It's zone C, R3, and that would allow density a little bit higher than typical single-family district. It's based on size. It's a fairly large lot. They could probably have 2 units there.
So this unit is, or is it going to be part of the apartment complex?
It's going to be a single-family home.
So it doesn't fit with the current plat or zoning what's currently there.
In the R3 district, you can have single-family homes. That's probably one of the largest single-family residential zoning districts that we have. It's a medium high density residential district. Apartment buildings may be too dense for current standards for a typical R3. They are pre-existing, probably our code for the zoning there now.
How many, just curiously, how many apartments are in each of those buildings? Do you know?
Can't remember if there are 4 or 8. Let me see if I can see them.
Are they 2 level?
Everything keeps getting moved around here. Yeah, they're 2 level. I can share my screen again here.
So I'm pretty sure those are 8s.
Will it be used as part of the rental there? Is it going to be a single family residence and a rental, or is it going to be part of the apartment complex?
I don't know what you mean by is it going to be?
Is it intended to be a rental property?
I don't know.
Or it's you don't know.
No, and I mean, the owner could tell us one way or the other, and he wouldn't be beholden to it.
I understand that. So actually what it sounds like, he's going to move another building in there and rent it out as part of that apartment complex. And you're saying it's already too densely populated.
I'm not sure. Of apartment buildings in R3, they're generally in there as a planned residential development where the density is spread out through the whole subdivision. I don't know if he's intending on selling this as a single-family home to a homeowner or if he was planning on renting it out. He does own both of these apartment buildings that are currently next to it, and then I believe he owns and lives in the next property line. But due to the size of the site, much, it could be developed much denser.
Justin, I have a question. Or we're not done. I'm sorry, I can't see the thumbnails. There we go.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Messina.
Okay, under background information, paragraph 2, maybe I'm the only one that's confused. It says the applicant's proposing to move a manufactured house from 231 Galena Street. The house is about 20 years old. And then it says it is proposed to be demolished for the construction of a new home. How does that fit into this? I'm confused. What's being demolished? We're moving the home.
It's generally when people find houses to move, when they hear that they're going to be demolished because somebody's buying the site for a different purpose. Like when CVS was buying that block, they were going to demolish all those homes. That's where houses come from that are going to be moved.
I understand. So rather than it being demolished, he wants it moved and saved versus having it demolished. Gotcha.
Correct.
I was confused there. I wasn't quite sure how that fit into this. Demolishing one and building a new one and then moving it. Got it. Thank you. I get it.
You're welcome.
That was all me. Appreciate it.
So then to clarify for my benefit, the person that's moving this owns those properties, including the lot where he's moving it to, but he does not live at this house. He's just buying the house
Correct. He lives on 35th Street.
next door to the apartments,
Yes, correct.
west of. Okay. And my, to sort of follow that train of thought, it looks as though this is going to be another rental to me. And so that's something for us to think about. We've already got some kind of overdensity units, although they're grandfathered in, so it's all okay. But are we shoehorning another one? But it's not so much shoehorning, right? Do you think the lot's got enough size to it to accommodate a driveway and a giant 7-foot deck off the back?
Yeah, I mean, this site is definitely large enough for this house. The house is not very large.
Right.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Justin, that lot is a completely separate parcel ID number from the apartments next door, correct? I'm looking at the Dakota County GIS, and that's a whole separate lot. We're not putting this house on the same lot as those apartment buildings, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's its own lot. In fact, it was as its own subdivision in 2014.
So there's no actual, so as far as any residential zoning or anything like that, there's nothing tying that to the apartments next door. It would be like any other single family house anywhere else in the city.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I had. Thanks.
And then the part of the agreement would be that the existing gravel road would have to have an easement on it. We need to ensure there's access to the easterly apartment complex.
Yes, either through this property or through the property to the west.
To the west, and this is quite a beaten path, and the way the cars are parked, it's used daily.
Yeah, it looks like half the people who park in the back come from one direction and half from the other.
Okay. And so some of those cars are actually parked on this lot where it looks like there's a big common paved parking area for these two buildings. This is sort of an L lot, right? Backwards L.
It's kind of like a backwards L. They certainly come through this property and park along this edge. Probably the best way to handle the situation would be to put a access easement on the driveway to the west and then reconfigure this parking lot with parking in the middle and, the landscaping around the side rather than on the back edge.
Yeah, it looks like these two, I mean, they're mirrors of one another, even including the parking and the green space and everyone that's parking there to the east, those three cars that are in the eastern extreme are really on what was green space in the other lot. So how do we, yeah, we don't have an owner to talk to here or I'm
No.
curious about some intentions.
Yeah, he's not in attendance.
Right.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
reading what the action requested is, it says the purpose of reviewing a proposed house move is to determine if a building that is moved in the area has aesthetic and functional compatibility with the area. I don't think we have the authority, if you will, or even the purview to even decide how he uses it. Tell you the truth, because he could say, yeah, I'm going to do one thing, and then once it's there, he could do anything he wants, just like any other single family house. I don't think his intentions, just be honest, I don't think his intentions are even going to come into play here, to be honest with you. We just have to determine if this particular structure belongs in this particular area and if it fits. And the one thing that caught my eye, Justin, was on the report. It said you were talking about the house values, and that the difference of 149.3 and 212,000 was significant but not extreme, or something similar to that. Well, that's a pretty significant difference in values for me, my own personal perspective. So that right there, it just doesn't fit the surrounding homes. It may fit on the lot, but it doesn't necessarily fit the surrounding area. I mean, that's a $80,000, almost $90,000, or no, $70,000 difference value. And if we're going to be consistent with, the last two projects we just took on about house values, that's huge. I mean, that right there is, we have hard numbers right there to look at. So anyway, I just wanted to redirect it towards the structure itself versus his intentions, because we can't legislate that. We can't tell him how to use his house or his property in that respect. As far as in this particular district, in the R3 district, versus, commercial versus residential and so forth. But
sure. I mean, the homeowner could build whatever he wanted there. I mean, he could build a duplex or possibly a triplex, depending on the square footage of the lot.
Yeah.
I think one reason I was talking about that the home values are, they're kind of a range. There was one home that was lower value than this structure, but there were a couple that were on the very high end that did skew it pretty far out of comparison.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Romans?
I know sometimes pre-built homes like that can get a bad rep as far as their appearance or things like that. I grew up in one, back with my parents, and I guess I got one question quick for Justin. Is the property value that you're placing, is that including the property as is with the house placed on it?
It's just the value of the structure.
Okay, and are you comparing the values of the structures or the entire property in the other cases?
Apples to apples. I'm only comparing the structure values of the proposed home against the structure values in the area.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure on that. So if he built an accessory structure too onto the property, does that increase the value comparable? Because these other ones would probably have garages and stuff like that on them as well, which will increase the property value, and this one does not.
Yeah, they don't. There's not a separate value for accessory structure, so I assume that's probably lumped into the.
Okay.
the built structure.
So, I see the configuration kind of a little bit strange. However, the property values are rangy, and if this building had a garage as well, it might be up into that normal area as everything else is. But I guess I can't argue against that. It doesn't necessarily fit. Based on what it looks like with the maps and the aerials here, there's a wide range of homes and different styles here, and affordable housing is still always going to be important. I don't think it's going to, I would hope it would not make a huge impact upon property values of the area, no more than the current apartment buildings do. That's what I have here. Thanks.
I think, oh yeah, go ahead, Mr. Halbert.
Just to add a little clarity to what Commissioner Romans was talking about, if you added a one-car garage, you're looking at about a $15,000 to a $20,000 addition in pricing. Looking at some of the other properties, most of them are, there's several that are a Rambler style, which gets you a little bit closer to the style of the manufactured home. But there's a difference anywhere from 500 to 700 finished square feet, which will add additional value to the home. Now, if that house is built and they put a basement underneath it and put in that kind of a foundation, then they'd be adding value immediately to it, even if it's unfinished. But on most modular homes, as you know, they don't have basements. They just might sit on a slab foundation. But in terms of the ancillary structures, when you have like little tiny sheds you might find most backyards, those aren't going to add anything. It's not until you look at the big garage / sheds that you'll see around town that you're looking at anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 on those, depending on the size. But just put some dollar amounts on what you were talking about.
Thank you, Mr. Holberg. So coming back around, I would think, I know, like Commissioner Messina brought up, we sort of get wrapped up sometimes, or maybe it's me, get wrapped up in a bigger picture thing, but as far as how they settle easements and accesses is not our business at this point. I like to think about those things so that, this is going to work in the long term and some of these things don't fall through the cracks. But as for this building fitting in here, I think Mr. Hallberg and Mr. Romans brought up some great information about house values. To be honest with you, the commercial, what is the commercial use that is just east of this, and a house sort of screening that is going to be an asset, I think, to this neighborhood in many ways. What is that use? Do you know, Justin?
I think it kind of changes from time to time. There's, I think, several uses that go in there. I think a lot of the businesses in there are leasing the space and they change. Some are more of storage of vehicles, and some might be more of contracting storage and
Insurances to the east of that, the east of the sheds. There's also one of the, I believe, plumbing outfits in town is out there.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Justin, what's the setback distance between the end of the house and the pine trees there, which separate the Hayes Drive development? What's the feet? How many feet between the end of that house and that? Right, yep, right there, right where your cursor was.
Sure. Actually, I could pull up my GIS.
And while you're doing that, in that setback, can there be any storage?
Yeah, I mean, It'd be
Can
in the
someone pull 5
backyard.
cars in there and store 5 cars between the end of that structure that he's putting in and the pine trees, just like they have parking lots?
Yeah, I mean, they'd be limited to however many cars can park in an R3 district. It's either 3 or 5.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Well, sure. It looks like to the back of the home, from the back of the home to the fence by the condos, it'd be 70 feet.
70 feet? Okay, thanks.
So I'm not sure, Robert's rules wise, I think we're doing this backwards, but I've just kept doing it. I'm of a little bit of understanding that we shouldn't even be having a discussion until we have a motion on the table, but I may be wrong about that. We always discuss them before the motion's made. But I want to make a motion on this particular item at this point in time. Or offer any other further questions, comments.
I do have one question for Justin, if this is the proper time to ask him.
Go for it.
This happened on our last meeting and it happened this meeting too. Is there a time limit for when a public notice is made from the time that the notice goes out to the time we can get comments? Last meeting, we got a lot of last minute comments on email, in the afternoon. And this meeting, we also got comments in on email in the late afternoon, which was only a couple hours before the meeting. Can you explain that? Just kind of put that out there, how that works? Because it says to date, but I'm wondering, is there a limit on that? Because it doesn't give me a lot of time to review sometimes those comments if I'm not available on email. Just because we haven't discussed any of that yet, even here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. We're all made today, so I don't know what else we can do to get them to you sooner.
Okay. So there's not a time limit from the time the public notice goes out to the time the comments can come in. It can be any time right up until the meeting.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times people don't comment until city council. And sometimes people never make a comment. But,
okay,
we're required to give them 10 days notice.
Sure.
And, a lot of times people don't think about it until, it's the day of the meeting or something. Then they think, oh boy, I better make my comment now or forever hold my peace. So I think that's why they're always the last minute.
Okay, and then so for the record, I just wanted to acknowledge that we did receive those comments via email for those that submitted them, since they're not part of the original packet. So if they are watching or they are participating or plan to, let them know that we did get the comments, or at least I want to let them know that I got the comments and reviewed them. So.
And those are the condo dwellers to the south of in question?
Yeah, that's correct. To be the Hayes Drive, that area.
Yeah.
The condos.
Yep. Okay. Well, we're back around to reviewing the proposed house, determine if the building that is moved into the area of the city has an aesthetic and function compatibility with the area. Having discussed this, does anyone want to make a motion at this point? And the motion would be, I guess, to recommend that this thing fits and send it up to city council. And if we don't have a motion, is there a counter motion? Do we make a motion to deny?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Romans,
I guarantee I'll say this wrong, but I'll make a motion to approve the house move review at 535 35th Street West with the staff recommendations as listed.
perfectly done. Is there a second? And I guess so we can continue the conversation, I will second that motion. And any further discussion? Hearing no discussion, Justin, could you call roll for us?
Sure. Commissioner Romans,
Aye.
Commissioner Hallberg,
No.
Maskey. You're muted. I didn't catch that. Commissioner Messina,
No.
Commissioner Best,
No.
and Chair Johnson.
Aye.
Okay, that vote failed to pass. And without any other motions, this could go forward to City Council with a failed vote to pass recommendation.
And so it goes. All right. Very good discussion. Other business. What's up, Justin?
Well, I think we've had quite a bit come through Planning Commission recently. There's nothing pending coming up, so we'll see if anything comes. And then we've just got a lot pending review at City Council. The last thing that Council heard related to Planning Commission business was for the variance for the boathouse on First Street, and they approved that request. And then the other items that we had were just for first reading and calling public hearing. So there hasn't been any discussion on any other items yet. The items that we had tonight will go forward for some September 21st consideration. So, that's all that staff has.
Any other questions, commissioners? Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second? I will second. There you go, Emily second. All right. I think we're adjourned.
And we can just call a vote on that. Be brief.
Okay.
Commissioner Romans,
Aye.
Hallberg,
Aye.
Matsky,
Aye.